Jazz and beyond.
Where the standards are always hot.
And the mood's just right.
On 702
and CapeTalk.
The Wanderer. That's the beautiful track coming out of Nick Ford, who is definitely a great jazz bassist and composer out of Cape Town. And on his new album called Terra Solus, that features 8 original compositions of his. And he's got an amazing ensemble of musicians that bring about this lifelong devotion to music and passion for his artistic expression, and bringing it out in these beautiful tracks that are on this album. I had a moment with him during the week. He came here into the studio and we sat and had a conversation about him and this album and a whole lot of other things. Really enjoyed the conversation. Hope you are going to enjoy it as well. This is the track you just heard called Wanderer, which is one of the tracks that he also talks about in the conversation. And this is how the conversation started. Jazz and Beyond on 702 and CapeTalk. And our guest is Cape Town based, but temporarily Joburg based, Nick Ford, an amazing musician and bassist and a composer who has not only been recently been nominated for a Summer Award for his album, but also the Mzansi Jazz Awards. Hello, Nick.
Hello, Nothemba. Lovely to be here.
A pleasure to be here. This is your first full album, and already it's headlining and clearly being noticed above a lot of other musicians. How does that make you feel?
It's really incredible. This album has been very special to me. I really wanted to make a project that I could be super proud of and say, this is my first offering, well, full-length offering.
Yes.
And I think it represents who I am as a musician, and the fact that it's resonated with people so well is really heartwarming, and it makes it all worth it at the end of the day. It's not easy to make an album, but it's great when it connects with people.
Well, clearly it connected with people. What do you think it is about the album that made you, stand out in the midst of so many releases that have come out? You know what I mean? And great ones as well.
I think the sound of the album is unique. It blends a lot of my musical influences, which I think are quite broad. Obviously, I'm a jazz musician. I make jazz. I like South African jazz, but I've been listening to all sorts of music my entire life. And I think that one of the things that makes the album special is the way that it blends all sorts of genres and styles and musical approaches. And it creates a unique sound that I don't think exists anywhere else in the current South African music scene.
I know you're Cape Town based, and me listening to the album, I definitely do get the Cape Town. I want to say Cape Town note or thread or culture or what is it's and you can't run away from that.
No, not at all. I grew up listening to Cape Town music. My father's a musician, and that led me to seeing a lot of live music being performed, attending a lot of gigs. And as you say, when you grow up in the Cape, you are going to, or when you live in the Cape, you're going to have the sound of Cape jazz, which is a unique thing that only exists in the Western Cape of South Africa. And so it was ingrained in me from a young age. I didn't need to attempt to make Cape jazz. I just happened to be making Cape jazz by virtue of the way that I was composing.
Yes, because I mean, if you're in KZN or if you're in the Western Cape or in the north of the country, or what, you definitely get to absorb the culture. Is it whether it's the music or it's the food? It's the lifestyle, dress code, everything. You become all of that. You call the album Terra Solus. What's that?
So it's a Latin phrase, actually, and the meaning of it is lonely earth. I wrote a lot of the music when I was in Joburg last time. It was around last year, April, May. And, moving to Joburg for work is always an interesting thing for me because I don't know a lot of people here. I'm used to Cape Town. That's where I grew up. That's the place that I like, the ocean and the vibe of Cape Town. So coming here is always a bit of a shock to the system. And I found myself just spending a lot of time alone. On my own. I'd go to work in the evening, see my colleagues, and then for the rest of the day, really, I'd be on my own in my room or going out or wherever I was. And it made me contemplate a lot about how, as we go through life, the one constant is that we have ourselves. Everything else will change. Everything else is going to change. But we have to live with ourselves every day. Our internal monologue, our feelings, our desires, our everything is stuck with us, for better or for worse, whether we like it or not.
And what does that mean for you, Nick? That realization that you have yourself, that's the one constant. And what responsibility does that bring?
Yeah, well, it's not always easy. Sometimes you battle with yourself. Sometimes you really fight with yourself. And it's about finding a way to live with yourself, basically, through anything. We go through phases or times when you are very content with how things are with yourself, with self-image and all of those kind of things. And you go through times when you struggle with it. I certainly have had all the ups and downs of that. And so Terra Solus doesn't give an answer to any of that. It doesn't tell you the solution to living with yourself or to finding yourself, but it captures the feeling. I describe the music sometimes as impressionistic almost. It's not trying to send a message or an agenda or like a manifesto of any sort. It's meant to capture the feeling. And again, I think
reflect
that's what resonates with people.
What is.
The music isn't specific, and so that allows people to engage with it and feel the emotion of it in whatever way applies to them.
You made me giggle just now, when we were coming into the studio and you were making a comment about Senton. Senton is so different. Tell me what came to your mind.
It feels like you're in New York or something. It's crazy. You've got all these huge buildings, this massive skyline. It's very corporate, very different from the kind of scenes that I encounter on a day to day. Just to get in here, I had to sign in my name and get a badge and go through the turnstile and everything. So it's quite cool. It feels quite, I don't want to say futuristic, but it feels the way that I'm sure people who live in New York or wherever, any like metropolitan in the first world would feel.
It would feel. How does that by any chance, that realization of a change and the evolving of how we live and how we interact and how technical things have become, does that bring a smile or sadness to you?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't necessarily say a smile. I mean, it's very cool. It's awesome to experience, and I do love a lot of aspects of it. But there's also a lot of challenges that come with it. I think that people are struggling with a whole different host of struggles than any other time in human history, and we're still, with how fast everything changes, we're still learning how to deal with those things. The kind of advice that people could have given you 50 years ago can be entirely non-applicable now. We still need to learn what it means to live in a world with AI, with technology everywhere, with access to unlimited information. We haven't really had a lot of time to figure out the solution.
This is the lovely music, amazing bassist and composer Nick Ford, out of his album called Terra Solus. This is a track from the album called Continuum. And of course, he plays with amazing musicians. That brilliant guitar work you heard on this track, Dylan Fine, also has Justin Belays on alto saxophone, Jaden Hairbottle on tenor saxophone. Breath You van Skalkwyk is on piano. And Lunga Dubazan is on the drums and percussions. Nick Ford, of course, on electric bass and also upright piano. And I'm in conversation with him, a conversation that I recorded during the week when he came here in the studio, and spent some time with him. Even though he's playing the bass, he started off playing the piano and at a young age. But my goodness, what happened for him to get the bass? The bass. When you pick that instrument up, where do you tingle? Is it in the heart? Is it in your fingers, your toes, your body? When you pick up that bass, how does that make you feel?
I love the bass. I love being a bass player. I love playing bass so much. It occupies a role in music that I am very comfortable occupying. And that's really what it comes down to in terms of the love of bass for me is, it's a cool instrument. It sounds nice. It's fun to play and whatever. But the role of the bass and the way that it impacts the music that you're making is really the magical thing for me. And I really love that.
Have you? I mean, I would imagine there's a couple of bassists that you admire, you look up to, or you listen to, or you maybe wish, if I could play like that guy. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, certainly.
Do you have some names to drop?
Yeah, I mean, there's the local people. Obviously, I grew up watching a bassist named Wesley Ruston in Cape Town, who is really I think he's one of my biggest influences just in terms of how much I listened to him growing up in live settings. And then there's a lot of South African bassists who I've been inspired by. Sean Johannes from Cape Town, certainly. Shane Cooper from Joburg. Dalisu Ndlazi from, I believe he's Joburg based, but I think he's originally from KZN. All of these people have seriously inspired me, whether it's at like a jazz festival where I see them playing. Carla Mombelli is another huge inspiration to me on the electric bass, not on the double bass. So, those are the local influences. And then obviously every student of jazz has their, the classic greats. I love the bassist Scott LaFaro, one of the great bassists of classic jazz. He had a really tragically short career because he died quite young. Really tragically, but his music that he made was really incredible. And then the greats like Ray Brown, Kristen McBride, Ron Carter, all of these people are just amazing.
Wow, that's incredible. You were saying earlier on that you grew up listening to all sorts of music. Do you still even listen to other music now, or are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I go through phases, I think, where I'm listening to particular genres more, but I can't escape listening to all sorts of music.
Sure.
I particularly love, older stuff, the classics, 60s, 70s, 80s, that kind of thing. But I try my best to listen to modern music. I'd say that like the most recent stuff is probably a big blind spot for me, but I try to listen to a bit of everything.
What are your thoughts on the direction of jazz, considering the kind of music that you play? And like you say, you've listened to the classics, and there's a lot of South African jazz musicians that not only you listen to, but you play with as well. How have you, in the career that you've had, how have you observed either that jazz is transforming or changing, or being influenced, or maybe it's being influenced by other things and other sounds?
Yeah, I mean, there's incredible jazz being created all over. Certainly in South Africa, there's some new releases which are just brilliant and really worth listening to. But there are concerning parts of the jazz industry in South Africa compared to the rest of the world where, I don't know if it's getting the appreciation that it needs to have. Live concerts aren't always incredibly well attended. I don't know if the brilliance of the jazz that we're creating here is fully being appreciated, and I really wish that it could be, in the same way that jazz music and all kinds of art music as opposed to popular music, pop music, is being appreciated elsewhere in the world.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you have an idea of why that is? Because, for instance, I think sometimes, post COVID, people were a little wary about going out, and also just here at home, it becomes a little challenging sometimes to go out at night. You have to think about 1,000 other things whether before you decide, am I going to go to that venue? How safe am I? Will I be back in time? Will I get an Uber or whatever the case may be? Do you think it could be the practicalities of going out, or not necessarily that they just don't want to see live performances?
No, it's certainly the practicalities. And the facts of, living in South Africa and living in anywhere where, we're not America, we're not Europe, we're not any of those places.
Exactly.
We have very big struggles. And the fact of the matter is that appreciating, culture is a privilege for a lot of people. To be able to go out to a gig isn't just a matter of, wanting to and deciding you got to. Tickets are expensive. And if you live outside of, say Cape Town CBD, which is where a lot of the gigs happen, you're not only accounting in ticket prices, you're accounting in the ability to get there, transport costs, and, frankly, people who are in less privileged positions are just not able to access culture in the way that more comfortable people are. And in a country where there's such a big divide and inequality in that sense, you can say there's 60 million people living here. You can say there's so many people living in Cape Town, but the percentage of people who are actually able to engage with that is very low.
It's true.
And so it poses a challenge in getting that kind of music to the majority.
But what's the jazz scene like in Cape Town? I mean, are there enough clubs or venues? And what's the camaraderie like amongst the jazz musicians? Because here in Joburg, the musicians are complaining that there's cliques and things.
Yeah, it really depends who you ask, I think. There's certainly incredible musicians in Cape Town. There really are, and there's a lot of people working very hard, whether it's creating their own original music or performing as, we say sometimes there's artists who are focused on creating original music, and there's working musicians who focus on, giving music to people in whatever sense, in whatever setting that might be, whether it's just a background gig or just providing music as a service almost, which is no less important than being an artist. And there are incredible people working as hard as they can, but it is also a very big challenge in Cape Town. Musicians can struggle to fill a venue even if they are big names with big audiences. It's hard, and we're all trying our best, I think. But I feel like the general ethos and feeling there is that there's a lot of people who love music and want to make music, but it can be very hard to do that.
Yeah. The music of Nick Ford. Remember that name. It's his debut album, Terra Solus. And in actual fact, this is the track called Continuum. The other track I played was actually the title track of the album, Terra Solus. But this one you're hearing now is the Continuum track. And I'm glad you're enjoying the show. And Muketi Mukhasi Nyane, who's out in Rhodoport, says, today I really got the chance to listen from home, and I'm mostly listening while driving or working. He says, I love the tunes that are playing. He's listening all the way out in Rhodoport. Ray out in Riverside View, I hear you as well. He says he's glued right till the end. And Apple says, perfect way to soak up the sunset on a beautiful Sunday. Thank you so much. And we also have Michelle Taylor, who's listening all the way from rainy Arizona. Arizona is supposed to be dry and desert-like, and it is raining. Well, that's good. And Simon Jovo also saying he's enjoying the conversation with our guest, Nick Ford. The conversation is pre-recorded, and it was done during the week. At night, he is performing for the musical Chicago. He'll tell us about it all after the break.
Swooning for some jazz
Let Nothemba Madumo serve you up some jazz and beyond.
on 702 and Cape Talk.
Jazz and Beyond on 702 and CapeTalk, and this is where you come for the jazz and you stay for a good time. And I'm in conversation with Nick Ford, whose album is out. In fact, it came out in the beginning of the year in January. Terra Solus is the name of the album. I'm glad you're enjoying the conversation. Wonga Nchinga on X is enjoying it. He loved that Wanderer track. And Tefu Rabu also on X says this is just the best way to end my Sundays. And of course, Nick and I were talking about why a lot of people don't get to attend the live performances for jazz. And Tebu has sent a message saying, Nothemba, sometimes shows unattended because the advertisement and marketing such shows wasn't broad enough. So prospective audiences are not aware of such, so they end up missing out. So, hey, if you're marketing your show and your live performances, think about the likes of Debu. Where can you get a hold? How can you reach them? I think that is what Debu is trying to say. They'd love to attend, but they don't know about these because the marketing and advertising is a little short. Well, this is how my conversation with Nick Ford wrapped up. Of course, he's in Johannesburg right now until November. He's performing for a musical, Chicago, and also he's nominated for the Summers. And this is how we started the wrap-up of the conversation. Which brings me, Nick, to the diversifying aspect of being a musician, where as much as you are a jazz musician and you love jazz, you've released a jazz album, you're also on the musical Chicago, which is why you're here in Johannesburg, and how that also becomes important to be flexible as a musician, to find yourself in different spaces either than what you may necessarily love and focus on.
I certainly, it comes with its challenges and its benefits. I love musical theatre. I've been involved in theatre and in drama for all my life. I love doing drama in school. My brother is currently going to study musical theatre next year.
Yeah.
And we really do have a love of it in my family and certainly in my life. So the opportunity to become a working musician in theatre was really something that I latched onto as soon as the opportunity came, and that I'm incredibly grateful every day that I'm able to do that work. But you're right that it comes with challenges, because working 6 nights a week, doing 8 shows a week, it takes up a lot of time, and it means that you can't do a lot of gigs because most gigs happen in the evening, and you have to make sacrifices. And unfortunately, musicians are also in a situation where the kind of work that musical theatre offers, which is stable contract work, is sometimes the best thing that you can get compared to freelancing and hoping that you can get some gigs. Yeah. So the love combines with necessity as well. And so I see myself as someone who's very fortunate to do a job that I love and to be able to get a stable income and, provide for myself. Doing something that I really enjoy, but it does come up at the cost of not being able to do the other things that I enjoy.
But you're still young, so you got a long way to go.
People always need to remind me that. I think that people my age, especially these days, we're in a rush.
Yeah,
we're in a big rush to do everything.
True. Let's talk about some of the tracks on your album. I mean, your first single was The Wanderer,
yes,
which I've played. There's I want to talk about the ones that I'm playing. I'm also playing the title track, which you've explained what The Wanderer is that you wondering?
The Wanderer is anyone wondering, really. I like the word wandering because it almost implies just a bit of aimlessness, just kind of wandering around. And I feel like a lot of us can relate to the feeling of wandering. We come across things that we want to do and people we want to spend time with, and as we wander on our journey, we maybe find little stops along the way that we'll stop at and explore. But ultimately, our entire lives are wandering through life, and seeing what we can do. So I feel like a wanderer, and I think that a lot of people can, in whatever way that they feel like that applies to them.
All the best in your wandering. Moon Gazer, in fact, listening to that song, I immediately just imagined myself in the middle of the night in the moon, because I love the moon myself. And it did bring in that feeling of looking out into the moon and gazing and bringing all sorts of imagination and thoughts and images. Is that what you want us to do with that song?
Yeah, Moongazer was very special to me, especially at the time that I was writing the album. I had a bit of an obsession with the moon. There were just at the time I was thinking about it all the time, and I was like tracking the cycles and finding out when it's going to be full and finding out where it's going to be at the time. And I had a lot of, I had a lot of connection to it, and I think that the moon is an incredible thing. It's in the sky for all to see. And one of the things a couple of the things I was thinking about at the time when I was writing is that pretty much every single human that has existed and that will ever exist has seen the moon. It's just a fact. It will be there for the entirety of humankind. And that is something that we can all use to connect to anyone that has existed and will exist. And one of the other things I was thinking about is that when I look up at the moon at night, there are people all around the world who can see it as well. And in the state that the world is in right now, it's very sad and horrible to think about the fact that the moon that I'm looking at in comfort, and just gazing at from the comfort of my life, is the same one that people whose lives are being ruined right now and who are in war zones and going through some of the biggest horrors that humanity has seen. It's the same moon that they're looking at, the very same thing.
Wow.
And so that constantness and that ubiquity of the moon was very important to me at the time. And so I wanted to capture a song, or I wanted to make a song that captures the feeling of looking up at it.
Well, that
song was very.
I love the fact that point you make of looking at the moon, and you're not the only one. Someone else in some part of the world going through a completely different life and experience is looking at the very same moon,
absolutely.
Which brings a sort of unifying element about it, and the world that we live in. Look, your album has incredible musicians that you used on it. Tell us very quickly about the musicians you used to record it, because maybe when you win that summer award, you want to thank them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very fortunate that the musicians who played on my album are good friends of mine as well. As we were talking about the camaraderie of the Cape Town jazz scene earlier, these are people that I've worked with throughout my career since I started. These were some of the first people I ever did gigs with. And it's quite a diverse array. I mean, we have someone who's my age studying at the College of Music, and in the same album right next to him, we have his lecturer who's the head of saxophone there.
Wow.
We have people who are working all the time, like the pianist Brathy van Skalkwyk, not just playing jazz music, but playing all sorts of music. He's on that. The drummer, Langa Dubazana, he's a jazz drummer, but he's also an incredible classical percussionist. And so I've got this really amazing group of musicians who bring all sorts of different approaches to music to the album. But I'm also fortunate to say that they are people that I can personally relate to because they are my friends.
Yeah. Listen, congratulations on the summer nomination for the jazz category. You are nominated together with Duduzo Makhathini for his album Unomkhubulwane, also Nomfundo Xaluva,
Yes.
for her album Dilapa, Peter Oret for Hope Dies Last, and Nesh Nonrishi for Apo Kunjenge. We certainly wish you the best on that, and we hope Joburg treats you well while you're here performing for the musical Chicago, and hopefully you'll go home with an award at some point.
Hope so. Hope so.
Thank you for coming to Jazz and Beyond.
Thank you very much.
Jazz and Beyond. This is a track where Nick and I were talking about called Moon Gazer. Isn't it just amazing? Unfortunately, we are running a bit of time, so download the album, buy the album, so you can listen to the rest of the album in your own good time.